Welcome to Dodgers Dawgs. As part of the Dodgers Daily Network, Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in here on a beautiful Monday morning. Hey, I've got about 30 minutes, probably, maybe not even quite that long. Wanted to get in a quick show and talk about the roster that was just put out for the Dodgers. Nothing really earth-shattering. I think we're going to get into some of the reasons, we talked about in the NLDS roster, some of the reasons why I think the NLCS roster was put together, and some of the reasons why the last couple of spots were chosen the way that they were. I want to get into some conversation with you, so whatever you think about this roster or whatever it may be, go ahead and log on in and chime in as far as what you think that should have been versus what the Dodgers actually did. So let's go ahead and get a good show going together today, and let's talk some beautiful Dodgers baseball as the Dodgers are set to take on the Milwaukee Brewers tonight in Milwaukee. So actually, I need to look up the game time. I think it's 5 o'clock Pacific. If I'm wrong on that, go ahead and correct me in the chat. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Let's look at the position players and the pitchers here. So what I think is going to happen here, if you look at, Helen has been so good with the prediction of the rosters. Very close again. Helen was very close again. But there was, I was one off on the last one. This one, I couldn't make my mind up whether, of course, you can't make your mind up because you don't know the health of Will Smith. So I think the very first thing you have to say with this roster is that it's very good news because beyond everything else, yes, 5 o'clock Pacific. That's what I thought. I doubted myself there. At 7 o'clock my time. That's why I get confused because I am 2 hours. I'm 2 hours ahead of West Coast time, and then Austin's 3 hours ahead of West Coast time. So I think the very first thing you have to analyze when you look at this postseason roster is the fact that Dalton Rushing is left off. So in and of itself, that right there is not necessarily a positive. Okay, let me actually see if I can move this over where you can see this a little bit better. That in and of itself isn't necessarily a positive, but the positive in that goes to tell you that the Dodgers think that Will Smith is healthy enough to be the starting catcher. So I think that right there in and of itself is very good news that Will Smith, that the organization trusts Will Smith to be healthy enough to handle the catching duties. Ben Rortvedt then can be the backup, and the Dodgers can go about it from that perspective. So the first thing that you notice there, no Dalton Rushing, Ben Rortvedt on the roster. I don't think anybody above Ben Rortvedt here is a surprise at all. I mean, obviously, unless you want to maybe think Alex Call, but I know some people didn't think he would be on the NLDS roster. I never, ever, ever thought that. I thought Alex Call played too big of a role. And then obviously after the big impact that he made in that final game, Alex Call was an absolute slam dunk, the same way anybody above Ben Rortvedt in this position player list was as well. So leaving your thoughts, let me know what you think about leaving Dalton Rushing off. We'll get into why I think that happened. Obviously, I just got into the fact that it means Will Smith is healthy, and that's a good thing. So a couple of options that the Dodgers had, and we're going to get into why the Dodgers went the way they did. I really felt like I said in this last series that the Dodgers, with their last couple of spots on the roster, they weren't going to go player, they were going to go role. And I think they squarely did that, and you saw that Ha-Seong Kim, he played a very good role in pinch running. Justin Dean played a role at late game defensive substitution. And in the clinching series against the Phillies, remember, Justin Dean scored the tying run on Mookie Betts' walk to come home, and then Ha-Seong Kim scored the winning run on that last play where the pitcher threw it home and all mayhem broke loose. So Ha-Seong Kim, Justin Dean both played roles, however big you want to say it. That's your opinion, and that's up to you. But they definitely squarely both played roles in the NLDS. The Dodgers won, so they chose to go with them. 14 position players and 12/13 pitchers with Shohei Ohtani. So they added another pitcher, and the reason why they did that, why they add another pitcher, is because this is a 7-game series, instead of a 5-game series. So there's more likely to be, even like if you wanted to say, hey, a Blake Trinan or a Clayton Kershaw, you definitely don't want those guys to be in your high leverage. Even if you wanted to make that claim, there is more likely in a 7-game series that you're going to have a game or two where you need to go non-high leverage, like whether either you're blowing out the Brewers. I'm not saying that this will happen, but it's more likely to happen that there's a game or two to where you need your lower leverage guys because the score is out of hand, the score is this or that. I know the term nowadays that people they call it punting. I think there's a game or two where you might want to or have to punt more so. The odds are better of that in a 7-game series than it is in a 5-game series. So you need that extra pitcher. So first and foremost, the Dodgers, no Dalton Rushing. That's good news. Not for Dalton Rushing because we love Dalton Rushing, but that's good news because they are making a statement there that Will Smith is healthy. And so hopefully with a healthy Will Smith that got some at-bats under his belt in the last series in the NLDS, then hopefully we can get the offensive Will Smith. So him being healthy, him having some at-bats under his belt, hopefully he can now become, now he did have the one big hit, but hopefully he can become a bigger factor on the offensive side of the ball. The Dodgers really, really, really need him from that. So that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two, not unexpectedly, 13 pitchers if you include Ohtani. One more pitcher on the roster than they had for either the wild card or the NLDS. Again, with the 7-game series, not a surprise whatsoever. So what it came down to is you had Dalton Rushing, Ben Casparius, Clayton Kershaw, and Will Klein. Those 4 guys were all fighting for that last 2 spots. And then if you add, Ha-Seong Kim and Justin Dean, 6 guys for 4 spots, right? So 2 guys at all times were going to be left off. So if you wanted to go 15, if you wanted to go 14 and 12, then you were going to have to eliminate either Ha-Seong Kim or Justin Dean to add Dalton Rushing. And we've said it this entire time. If you think that Will Smith is healthy, then Dalton Rushing has absolutely no role whatsoever because it is very clear that Ben Rortvedt is ahead of him and rightfully so in the hierarchy of this roster for the Dodgers. So what happened is the Dodgers prioritized role. They felt like Ha-Seong Kim, Justin Dean had a better opportunity to have a role that will impact this series than Dalton Rushing would. So then now that you've come to the conclusion that you're going to go with 14 position players, Dalton Rushing being the role that's left off and the person that's left off, now you're going to go with 12 pitchers, one more pitcher. That allowed you to add Ben Casparius. So the question became, once you decided to eliminate Dalton Rushing, you then had 2 spots for 3 guys. You had Ben Casparius, Clayton Kershaw, and Will Klein available for the 2 spots. So the Dodgers chose Ben Casparius. I think that was a pretty easy choice. I think most people had Ben Casparius back on this NLCS series. I don't think that's a surprise to a whole lot of people. I think it came down to, do you want another lefty with Clayton Kershaw or do you want another right-hander with Will Klein? Well, first of all, Clayton Kershaw has been there, done that. He's a Hall of Famer. Just from a nostalgic and experience perspective, it would be a massive upset. Even if you think analytically it's the right decision from an on-the-field performance perspective to have Will Klein, who, by the way, hasn't pitched in a while, right? There's another factor over Clayton Kershaw. That just was simply never going to happen. So if you go crunch the numbers versus right-handers, you can see right here Milwaukee. Actually, let me do this right here, and let me put up both of them side by side so you can see them, and we can go about it that way here. Let me do this, and then let me see if I can get this done side by side here. Well, I'm failing at that. So here is right here. Let's just start right here versus right-handers. Milwaukee down here. You can see they are. This is against the in the NL 254 average. They 737 OPS. But if you see here, okay, they've given up 126 home runs and 3,889 at bats. So let me actually get to my left-handed stats here. That's versus right. Okay, so let me, what did I do with so this is versus righties. Against lefties, this batting average is a little bit more. I'm just going to say this. Against lefties, the batting average is a little bit higher. Against lefties, this is about one home run for every 30 at-bats right here for the Milwaukee Brewers. Against right-handers, against left-handers, that goes from one home run in every 30 at-bats, which isn't awesome. But, hey, it's on the margin, so you got to talk about the marginal numbers. This at-bat, this number right here, home runs, it goes to about one home run for every 40 at-bats. So when you evaluate right versus left, to be honest with you, the Milwaukee Brewers are very similar in batting average. They're very similar in overall slug. But they give up, they have one home run for every 30 at-bats against right-handers versus they have one home run every 40 at-bats against left-handers. So that favors Clayton Kershaw, the lefty, over Will Klein or Ben Casparius. I think Ben Casparius was always going to be the guy over Will Klein, just because I think he's more in the trust tree. And I do think the determining factor, beyond the fact that Clayton Kershaw is Clayton Kershaw, is the fact that the Dodgers, that the Brewers, they hit more home runs against right-handers than they do left-handers. And one thing you can't do is give up home runs to this Brewers team, because they are too good. They are absolutely too good at executing the game of baseball beyond home runs. If you do allow a home run here or there, you are going to absolutely get your butt kicked by this Brewers team. So who would Clayton Kershaw maybe come in to face? And then here's another deal. You already have Anthony Bonda, you have Alex Vesia, you have Justin Robleski and Jack Dreyer. So those guys would probably come in the higher leverage moments to get a left-handed out here. You would not think they would come in against a Jackson Chourio or a Caleb Durbin. It would be in the part of the lineup like a William Contreras, Bryce Terang, that part of the lineup there, where a Clayton Kershaw would come in and face Milwaukee. So there are the numbers for Milwaukee. You can see Jackson Chourio, very good. Maybe even, a Christian Yelich, who is 242, OPS of just 660 against left-handers. When you flip that against right-handers, you can see right here that Christian Yelich is just absolutely awesome against right-handers. So factor number one is the home runs. The Brewers hit more home runs against righties than they do lefties. And then when you look at their best players, Bryce Terang, Jackson Chourio, Jackson Chourio obviously is better against lefties. But Christian Yelich is much, much, much better against right-handers. So I think that played into the factor there. And then also you look at William Contreras, Sal Frelick, and on down the line. Really, you got to get down to like the Joey Ortizes to favor the right-handed aspect. So it's not necessarily the overall right versus left. It's what would the matchups look like Clayton Kershaw versus a Will Klein, and facing the parts of the lineup that either one of them would have to face in a relief setting. So first of all, I think they went role over player in eliminating Dalton Rushing. I totally agree with that decision. That's what I thought they would do for the NLDS rosters. Again, we saw the role of Kershaw Kim and Justin Dean. Not huge in any way, shape, or form, but we're not talking, when you get down to the last 25 and 26 on the roster, you're talking about margins. You're not talking about the huge aspects of things. So you come down to, okay, well, who can produce, who can be have a role in this and not. They decided that with a healthy Will Smith, Dalton Rushing does not have a role. That brought, I think Kershaw Kim was safe the entire time. I think it came down to Justin Dean or Dalton Rushing. And it's not that they think Justin Dean's a better player. It's that they think that he can play a role with Tommy Edman playing infield only. We've been saying this for the last two series. With Tommy Edman not being able to play the outfield, that's what's opened up things for Justin Dean. That's what's eliminating, that and Ben Rortvedt eliminating Dalton Rushing. I think Ben Casparius just simply is in the trust tree more than more than Will Klein. And once you eliminated Dalton Rushing, that gave you two spots for the three pitchers between Will Klein, Ben Casparius, and Clayton Kershaw. So, for the most part, I went over some matchups righty-lefty. I think you could split hairs there. You could say this, you could say that, whatever you wanted to. I think also probably the biggest factor is when you're talking about 2 spots remaining to add to your roster, they just decided to go, let's go one left and one right, and then that gives us kind of the balance there because the Brewers are balanced. There's no great tendencies other than maybe the home run per at bat. For every time Christian Yelich is better against a right-hander, Jackson Churio is better against a lefty. So it's 6 one way, half dozen the other. Let's just go one right and one left, and then while doing that, that means that you don't have to eliminate a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest pitchers ever to wear a uniform, one of the greatest Dodgers pitchers ever. You just don't have to go down that road of eliminating Clayton Kershaw from this roster at all whatsoever. And there's good justification behind it just to say, hey, we went one right and we went one left with our last 2 pitching positions. So I think the Dodgers, they nailed the fact they went with the roles on the position side. They went one right, one left with their last 2 spots out of the last 3 guys that they had available. And obviously that became possible because Tanner Scott has had his issues and he is not available for this series. So let me flip that back over. Who the roster is. Let me look at you here. Let's go over the starters. I think Helen probably hit this one just about exactly right. Let me actually go to I think Helen, let me get this here just a sec. Give me just a second. Sometimes it's clunky whenever I am by myself, but let me do this and let me give me just a second here. Let me open up this right here. And let me kind of tell you how I think the starting. I agree. I 1,000% agree with what Helen left as far as the starting rotation. So let me get to this here in just. I'm just gonna actually read her exact quote. So let me get here and right here. Okay. So the starters. Here's how I think the starters will go in order. Blake Snell, game 1, which we already know that. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, game 2. Tyler Glasnow, Shohei Ohtani. So 4 starters in this order: Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Ohtani. That allows Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Glasnow to pitch on regular rest in games 5 through 7. So Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Ohtani, your 4 starters. That gives you games 1 through 4. Games 5, 6, and 7 then would be Snell, Yamamoto, and Glasnow with Ohtani ready if you absolutely needed Ohtani. And then that allows you to, that gives Snell, Yamamoto, and Glasnow 2 different outings. And their second outings in games 5, 6, and 7 would be on regular rest. So I think that's what it is. Again, Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani. I think the 3 pitchers that double up and have 2 starts would be Snell, Yamamoto, and Glasnow in games 5, 6, and 7. And I think they would be on, I don't think, they would be on regular rest. And that allows Ohtani. So if you brought in, say, that game with, that game 7 with Tyler Glasnow, you could do it backwards too. You could start Ohtani and then bring in Glasnow in relief. But if you started Glasnow in game 7, let's say you brought Shohei Ohtani in like say the 7th inning, Shohei Ohtani then would finish out the game. That way you wouldn't have to worry about what do you do with him after he comes out of the pitching. Would you have to put him in left field or whatever? So whichever way they would use Ohtani in that game 7, whether they starting him would make it cleaner because then that's like every other game. Glasnow comes in, he still gets to be the DH. So I think easily Ohtani could start game 7. Glasnow could be the piggyback guy just like we've seen in the past, or Glasnow could start game 7 if there is a game 7. Ohtani then could be the piggyback guy that would have to take it for the rest of the time, because if not, then you would either have to put him in the outfield or lose your DH. What a great crowd we have logged in this morning and this afternoon on Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. CNAB, thank you so much for joining. Hey, if you have not checked it out, we went an hour and a half long, broke down all the matchups. The Brewers personnel weren't trying to scare you as far as, hey, this Brewers team's too good to beat or whatever. Just kind of wanted to let you get to know a deep dive of the Brewers roster, some of the matchups, why they have been so good this year, and why the Dodgers should respect this team, and why this stands to, hey, if the Dodgers come out and play as well as they're capable of, like I've said many different times, it does not matter who's in front of them, they're going to win. The Dodgers have the most talent. They are the better team. But this is this is going to be the best team the Dodgers have faced in the postseason, in my opinion, hands down. This team is better than the Phillies just because I think they have a more complete roster in terms of the things that they can do that can act as kryptonite for the Dodgers. So if you have not checked out last night's video, go check out our live. We had Coach Holt join. We had Austin join. We went all throughout the pitching, all throughout the position players of the Brewers, and we had a hell of a good time, and we had a great crowd. So if you have not checked that out, please go do that whenever you have a chance. So let's get into some of the chat here. Good morning to you, CNAV. Hey, CNAV, yeah, we have 5 lefties in the pen. Big Banos, number 34 forever. Good morning, Coach. Great addition with Ben Casparius and Alex Call have a good series against the Phillies with great at-bats. Yes, this is what I'm saying. I think when the Dodgers fans are going to see this NLCS roster for the first time, they're going to look at it and they're going to go, okay, well, this makes sense. I don't think there's going to be very many people that look at this roster and think anything other than this is just about the only option they had. Once you realize that Will Smith was healthy enough to actually start games and catch entire games, that eliminated Dalton Rushing. I think everybody's going to be at least on board, if not totally in agreement, with Clayton Kershaw over Will Klein. I think everybody's going to be in total agreement with Ben Casparius over Will Klein. I think maybe the only other argument you could have made was a Justin Dean been taken off the roster and maybe a Will Klein instead of a Justin Dean to add that 13th/14th pitcher with Shohei Ohtani. So I think really the only thing that a Dodgers fan could maybe push back against with this roster would be Will Klein instead of Justin Dean. If you're going to make that argument, okay. I mean, I don't really have a total pushback on that, but really, I mean, Will Klein hasn't pitched in a while. Will Klein, is he really that big in your trust tree? I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm also not going to say you're right. I think the Dodgers would rather have that reinforcement. Maybe Justin Dean can pinch run. We know he can play the outfield. So I have no problems with that. But if you think maybe Will Klein over Justin Dean, I don't necessarily have a pushback for you, but I would also say I don't know how anybody could be like super pissed about that or anything, or like be unbelievably, one-sided, like, oh, yes, this should have happened or whatever. I think that's more of a, yeah, kind of, well, maybe. I think that would be one of those situations. So, hey, I hope Will Klein stays in the organization next year. I like the stuff I've seen from him. I totally agree. Great stuff. Started trusting his fastball. His secondaries played very, very, very well off of that fastball. Hey, Austin Brubaker just sent you a Google Sheets. Highly recommend looking at it when you get a chance. Look at the splits via WRC Plus for people in the NLCS roster. I will do that here in just a minute. Austin, as a matter of fact, let me open up my Gmail, and I might actually be able to get that in again. I'm by myself here because this is, so it gets kind of clunky when I go to doing this kind of stuff. So let's get into the Milwaukee splits here that Austin just sent right here. Let me just flip that over, and we can actually get to it. So here you go right here. You got Christian Yelich, WRC Plus against right-handers of 138, against lefties, Jackson Chourio. So that's what I'm saying. For every time you have an improvement, Christian Yelich is better against righties. Well, then Jackson Chourio is better against lefties, right? Jackson Chourio is substantially worse against right-handers. Okay, but Bryce Terang against right-handers 127 with a WRC Plus. Bryce Terang on the left-handed side 114. So he's good against both. So kind of ambidextrous there for a Bryce Terang. But Christian Yelich, he is 168 against lefties, 138 against righties, very ambidextrous. he is very, very good against either side. That's Jackson Churio. I'm sorry. Christian Yelich, very, very, very distinct splits between lefties and righties. So let me back that up. Christian Yelich, very distinct splits, lefties versus righties. So you're going to bring in Clayton Kershaw to face him and whoever may be after you get past Jackson Churio, and then Jackson Churio 168 against lefties and 92. So two of the best players for the Milwaukee Brewers have very defined splits. Churio better against lefties and Yelich better against righties, no doubt about that. You would expect that because that's the opposite hand. Bryce Terang is more of your kind of ambidextrous type of guy. You can see 127 against righties here, and then against lefties 114. So he's a guy that if you brought in Clayton Kershaw to get a left-hander out and he had to face three guys, you're not gaining anything necessarily handed-wise if you go righty versus lefty there. William Contreras, still not bad against left-handers, but certainly better against right-handers. So that favors Clayton Kershaw over Will Klein there. Sal Frelick against right-handers, 119. And as you look over here, he is 101. So again, not terrible against lefties, but better against righties. So you can see here, having the five lefties in the bullpen is what made sense for the Dodgers. Caleb Durbin, 106 against righties, 104 against lefties. So really what you have is you have a couple of ambidextrous guys in Bryce Terang and then Caleb Durbin. And really the only other guy that favored the lefty over the right-hander over the left-hander was Christian Yelich. And so Andrew Vaughn here, you look against right-handers, 111. Andrew Vaughn against left-handers is 202. So you definitely would not want Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn would be the second one, but he's good against righties too, but he's incredible against lefties. So if you do bring in a Clayton Kershaw, it would have to be a part of the lineup that did not face Andrew Vaughn or Jackson Churio. That's the difficulty of facing the Brewers. Once you get past Jackson Churio, you get to the part of a lineup where a lefty might be favorable because we see either it's a ambidextrous split and or it's favoring a left-handed pitcher. Then you put Andrew Vaughn in the middle of that, who just kills left-handers. That's why Milwaukee is such a tricky lineup, because you're trying to navigate, with a left-handed pitcher to favor the splits that you have, their left-handed splits. But then you have to face Andrew Vaughn, who not as just good against lefties. He is an absolute lefty killer. So it's going to be one of those tricky deals whenever you bring in one of your right-handers. You want to favor the splits there, but then again, you got to be careful against Andrew Vaughn, period. But especially if it's one of the five lefties that you just brought in that have to face at least three hitters. So that's the tricky part of it. Those are great numbers from Austin there. Those are the splits, right-handed versus left-handed. Again, Christian Yelich, much better against righties than he is lefties. Jackson Churio, much better against lefties than he is righties. William Contreras, Bryce Terang, fairly ambidextrous. Sal Frelick is a guy that is better against right-handers. He is one that you would want to bring in a right-hander to face, and we mentioned that Caleb Durbin and Bryce Terang are ambidextrous. So that's why it's there's no real tendencies, and then Andrew Vaughn kind of puts that. You would like to just bring in a lefty, but Andrew Vaughn kind of puts a wrinkle into that. Macking it daily. Real Dodger Stock needs to hire this. I'm not exactly sure what that says. Vato, he has good knowledge. Well, I appreciate that, Macking It Daily. Thank you so much for that. Hey, Austin, thank you so much for those splits. We got that up on the board. Are you, CNAV, is Austin going to do a show today too? I don't think he is. I don't think there's going to be time. That's why I went ahead and did one right now, because by the time Austin is able to do a show this afternoon, you're pretty much with the being 2 hours earlier, pretty much I think he's going to run out of time. We just talked about that last night. Austin didn't think there was going to be enough time, and so I went ahead and went on this time frame with his information, and went that way instead. So I hope you're okay with that, CNAP. You're stuck with me. Austin's way better on the analytics. I hope I did a good job with the righty-lefty splits, with the roster talk, why this and that was chose. So I hope you're okay with that. I like whatever computer the Dodgers are using to create the lineup, because so far the games it's simulated has provided the best outcomes. I totally agree. Al Minerva, very good job so far. Roark Stevens, hello from Tokyo. How about that? I like the roster, but a little disappointed Dalton was left off. Very disappointed for me, but I think it's the right decision. You cannot make decisions based on emotions. You got to make them based on what the best decision is for everybody. And I think that extra left-hander in Clayton Kershaw is worth a third catcher spot now that you know that Will Smith, this is the statement they're making, that Will Smith is healthy. Lifted after that catch of the wall. I want Justin Dean in center field in late innings. Again, role right there. He has a bigger chance of playing a role than Dalton Rushing does. And yes, he made a nice catch against that wall. Justin Dean, as long as he's not too nervous, is a very good defender in center field. So hopefully he can just relax and do what he's capable of, which is play good defense. Gregory says, Casey, I want Max Muncy playing daily. I don't care who's pitching against us, if they are lefties or righties. He needs to be playing, and I agree, because he needs to get in the groove. And just like Teo, whenever Max does damage, it's like a kryptonite card for the other team. When either Teo or Max has a thumbprint on the game, it seems like the Dodgers win every single time. And also, we saw that base hit from Max Muncy up the middle in game in game 5 of this last game, in that last inning. That came against a lefty. You know why he got that hit more than anything? You can analyze everything you want. Why did Max Muncy get that left-on-left base hit in the 12th inning? Because he's a dog. Because he's like, you know what, damn it, I got to get a hit for my team right now, and I'm going to get a hit for my team right now. So I totally agree with you, Gregory. Let's go with the dog aspect of Max Muncy over the analytics of right versus left, and let's put him in there and let him have every at-bat and let him be the dog that he is. I agree with that, Gregory. Roark Stevens, I say I don't want to see Blake Trinan put in a game unless we are already losing by 10 runs. And having said that, Roark, in a 7-game series, it is more likely that you're going to have games that you have to punt. And whenever you punt, you don't want to use your high leverage. I think that's where Blake Trinan, Clayton Kershaw come in, and you have a better chance of that happening in a 7-game series than you do in a 5-game series. Cole says the X factor for the NLCS is the Dodgers' experience. That's why Coach Barikoff and Coach Holt always say, just get this Dodgers team in the tournament. They know how to handle every situation. Let them handle all the situations better than the other team does. We saw that just in Game 5. I mean, you have a young pitcher, a 24-year-old pitcher that just didn't handle the moment the way that he should have. The Dodgers, with their experience, they know how to handle the moment. Typically speaking, they're not going to let the moment beat them. And so, yes, that experience factor, typically speaking, plays a big part in postseason baseball, and that in and of itself is an advantage for the Dodgers. Chuck Huddleston says, I agree, Dalton didn't really have a role in this series unless a catcher gets injured. Which, Chuck, if a catcher actually gets injured, like Tanner Scott did, you're covered anyways, because that catcher gets removed and Dalton gets added. So even if a catcher gets injured, you're still fine. The only thing that would be the worry is if a catcher gets nicked up in a game, say the first inning, somebody breaks a finger in the first inning. Ben Rortvedt was catching, he breaks a finger. Can Will Smith actually finish the rest of that 8 innings catching? That's your only concern. You're not concerned about injury, because injury you can replace, and putting Dalton Rushing on the roster based off of, being able to replace an injured player. Lifted says, might be a hot take, but I think Betts' defense is worth more than Will's at bats at this moment. I'll say this, okay? I was totally wrong on Mookie Betts, man. I said all year long I thought Mookie Betts should play second base. Just the work that he's put in, I'll tell you this, okay? Of all the things Mookie Betts has done, okay, of all the things that he has been in his career, I'm going to say this from a coach's perspective, not necessarily a production aspect or a fan's perspective. I'm saying this, if I was Mookie Betts' coach, I think that I have earned more respect for his game and just himself overall. No, I don't think. I know. You can disagree if you want, but this is how I see this. I have gained more respect for Mookie Betts this year, okay, with the way that he has failed and struggled and all of that offensively, the way that he continued to get better defensively, the way that he continued to battle, the way that he continued to grind, the way that he just continued to say, hey, whatever I need to do for the team, and the shortstop and the offensive player he has become, I've got more respect for Mookie Betts for what he did this year than I ever did even coming in, and that was a pretty damn high bar because he's been a Hall of Famer up until this year. Mad props to Mookie Betts. I was totally wrong on that situation. I don't think I was wrong. I think he finally got over the extra work. My whole point with that was the extra work that he had to put in before games was wearing him down whenever you combine that with the 15 pounds he lost. I think it took him almost the entire season to overcome that extra work he was putting in with a body that wasn't prepared to put that extra work in. He has stuck with it, he has grinded, and he has become one of the best shortstops in the game. And because of that, I think I have gained more respect for what Mookie Betts has done this year than anything he's done in his past. What he's done in his past has been super talented, has been super elite Hall of Fame type of skills, mad skills, that type of deal. What he's done this year has been gritty and tough and determined, and just that guy that leads by example every single day. Those are the kinds of things that make me want to get in a foxhole with a guy like Mookie Betts. And as Chris Navarro is saying, agreed, incredibly selfless from Mookie Betts. Absolutely. Ben Rortvedt, Casey, not Mookie, says Lift. Yeah, talking about it might be a hot take, but I think Rortvedt's defense is worth more than Will's at-bats. We'll see. I mean, you're saying that right now because Will Smith isn't hitting Lifted. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with you, but you're putting Will Smith's bat in there because what if he becomes Will Smith and becomes the force that he was for the first 3 quarters of this season, and he becomes one of your better offensive players? Will Smith is capable of being a better offensive player than Ben Rortvedt is of being a better defensive player. The ceiling for Will Smith offensively is higher than the ceiling for Ben Rortvedt defensively. Ben Rortvedt, of the 3 catchers, has the slowest pop time to second base. So yes, does he handle the staff well? All of that, yeah. But I would push back and disagree with you just from a ceiling perspective. If Will Smith starts hitting, that's way more valuable than any kind of defense that Ben Rortvedt could give. Now, if Will Smith continues to hit the way he is, you are 100% correct, Lifted, 100% correct that what Ben Rortvedt's doing right now is probably what he's done to this point has probably been better. So at this point today, I think you're probably right. Ben Rortvedt has actually probably been better than Will Smith. But you leave Will Smith in there because Will Smith has the ceiling to really kind of just make a much bigger impact on the team. So as of today, I think you're probably right. If you look at stats, as far as, the best version of what this Dodgers team could be, I would push back with you as far as that part of it. So it's just which way do you want? Do you want the ceiling or do you want to go with what you've seen so far? I'm going with the ceiling right there. If Will looks like Will normally does, I eat my words, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's 6 one way, half dozen the other. That's why the Dodgers Dogs community is so great, because you get into elite just back and forth. No necessarily right answer, no necessarily wrong answer. It's just great baseball talk, which is what that is. So let's go one more time before we get out of here. This has been a lot of fun. We've had a great crowd today. Wanted to go over this one more time with you, shift this over. Again, here are your 14 position players, 12/13 pitchers. If you add Ohtani as a pitcher there, I think it's Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani. I think I'm going to change my mind. I think Snell, Yamamoto, and Glasnow would get that start because it would be regular rest. So Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow start games 5, 6, and 7 if you need them. That's because they would be extra rest. I think Ohtani would be available if needed in some type of relief role as far as that goes. So I think that's your pitching there. I think they chose Justin Dean over Dalton Rushing because that tells you that Will Smith is fully healthy. He's going to start. And then I think it came down to Casparius, Kershaw, and Will Klein. They had 2 spots out of the 3. They went because of there's no real big-time splits to make a decision off of, but there are some guys you can get out with lefties. I think they went with Kershaw because he is left-handed, and then he's Clayton Kershaw, and they went with Ben Casparius over Will Klein because he is in the trust tree, I think, in the Dodgers organization. Based on what he did last year, they know he can trust his mentality. Not sure if you can trust Will Klein's mentality. They went with Ben Casparius over Will Klein because he is in the trust tree more. So that's how I see things. Hey, this has been an absolutely awesome show. Definitely, but see, Chuck Huddleston is top G. Will Smith makes a difference, but just by being in the lineup, do you think the pitcher is more afraid of Will Smith or Ben Rortvedt? That's exactly right. So Teo, the guys around Will Smith might get better pitches to hit. Another great comment there, Top G, that just like Ohtani not hitting very well, but like Coach Holt said in our last podcast, he got walked, right? So just his presence makes a difference in the lineup. Just the presence of Will Smith being one of the best, other than Cal Raleigh, the potential to be the best offensive catcher in the game. That presence alone makes the pitcher work differently, and that's worth its weight in gold there. So it's been a great show today. Super fun. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Always super humbled by the amount of support that Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network is given by you. Boy, it's going to be fun with Game 1 tonight at 7:08. I believe it's 7:08 Pacific, 5:08 Pacific, 7:08 Central Time, 8:08 on Austin's time, Eastern Daylight Time. So until then, thank you so much for tuning in, and it is a great day to be a Dodger.